Hi, I'm Zach Schnegg, Assistant Athletic Director at Wheeling University, and this is Dingo Talk.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Dingo Talk. My guest this week is Assistant Athletic Director at Wheeling University, Zach Schnegg. Zach, thank you for stopping by and sitting down with us.
Yeah, Carlo, thanks for having me, man. I know we had some issues getting some stuff scheduled on both ends, so I'm glad we were able to finally sit down and do this. So
I was going to say, we've been this is a 6-month show in the waiting. We've been going back and forth on this date works. Oh wait, we got internet problems. We got this. So it's good to get you here. We're going to do this the same way we do it every week. 2015, 2016 U is getting ready to make that decision for college. You went to St. John's in Bel Air.
Yes. Yep. Small Catholic school there. Yep.
So how does a guy from Bel Air, Ohio find his way to Greene County, Pennsylvania?
Well, actually, I'm from Shadyside, so it's like 2 miles. It's like right down the river. So I mean, basically the same town if you want to really realistically look at it. But I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to get into sports somehow, and the one thing I always go back to, I think it was a English assignment in junior year of high school, and the assignment was come up with a journalistic article. So I wrote on our high school football team's previous game the last week and got a good grade on it. The teacher said, good job. It is something you should look into. And I mean, I thought, well, I want to do something with sports, maybe get into sports writing. So that's one thing I really kind of thought about going from junior and senior year. And another goal of mine for college was to try to play baseball. And I knew I didn't have the stature nor the skills to play big time collegiate baseball. So any college fair I'd go to, I'd seek out like all the smaller college booths and try to get information on there. And came by a Waynesburg University, I think right at the big Pittsburgh college fair at the convention center one year. And then a couple months later, I got a brochure in the mail for the Lanny Fratteri Sports Announcing Camp, which you've had a couple people on the show talk about that before. And I never thought about broadcasting and thought it'd be something cool to try. So the family pitched in, and that was my birthday present that summer. Went to sports announcing camp and really fell in love with the announcing part. And there were a couple things that other people have talked about here on the show too, but the main reason why the camp relays so well into the college experience for me going from the camp into Waynesburg as a full-time student. Number one, you use the same facilities that you use every day for 4 years as a student that you use at that broadcasting camp for a week. Okay. You also meet the same professors that teach you and mentor you for that week, and you build relationships with them for the next 4 years. And then also I went to school with probably at least half, maybe even more of the kids I went to announcing camp that I went to school with. And I became good friends with a lot of those guys, met my college roommate through there.
So there's a sneaky little pipeline here, broadcasters just going down to camp and then we're gonna just stay in school together here.
Right, absolutely. But it kind of makes it nice. I mean, you don't go into college not knowing anybody. You know all of your professors basically. You know at least probably half to maybe 75% of the kids that are in your classes every single day. So it just makes sense. And I'm from a small town, and I graduated with 27 kids in high school. So to have 15 kids in a class was bread and butter to me. So it was an easy transition, and that was the best transition for me, I think.
Now, were there any other schools that you looked at, or once you went to the broadcasting camp and kind of got the feel of, this is my way to stay in sports, play baseball here, was there any other schools? Because you then make your way from Greene County, Ohio or Greene County, Pennsylvania to Ohio County, West Virginia for your job now. So how does that, or was there any other factors in there?
The only really other school I really looked at was West Liberty, because they had a broadcasting, good broadcasting department, and it was close to home. So, I mean, 25, 30 minutes, I could have lived at home, or at least been in the home area. I could have been back and forth. And I really didn't even know Bethany had a really good communications department as well. So maybe that's something I would have looked at, but I'm really glad with the decision to go to Waynesburg. But the transition to come back home is kind of a long one. So after I graduated college,
hold on, I gotta stop you there. That was my fault. I jumped the gun by putting that, but what you're doing now, we gotta get the Waynesburg side out of it.
Oh, okay.
So you talked about you met most of the people that you were in your major were at camp. you know the professors. What's that first semester, first year like for you? So you come from a small area, you go to a small area, but a little bit bigger, um, class wise. But what's that first semester, first year like for you? Was there a transition period? Was it tough? Did you kind of hit the ground running? How'd that go?
Yeah, kind of. It was kind of tough. I think just because first time being away from home, and I feel like I'm a pretty independent person, so it wasn't too hard of a transition, but it's still definitely a little bit uncomfortable meeting new people in the dorms, maybe having class with people you haven't met before. But I think once you're a couple months in, you kind of realize, hey, these are going to be my friends because we have the same interests, we have the same personalities, and you just kind of hit the ground running from there. No, not really. It really wasn't a transition period. Like I said, it made sense. It fit logistically as far as just what I was used to. I knew a lot of the kids I was going to go to school with. And the nice thing too is at Waynesburg, they make you get involved really early. So even as a first day freshman, they're having you try out for a weekly sports highlight show to a religious talk show, to having your own radio show, having your own shift from 3 to 4 on a Wednesday, to writing articles for the paper. And that's first day. As soon as you get to campus, after you meet with the professors, after you meet with your advisor, and they say, hey, maybe look at doing this, and getting involved. And that was really good as far as meeting people and finding out what I really wanted to do too. So that kind of helped as well, was getting involved as much as possible.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because for the major that, or the degrees that we have, the schools you think of, the big schools, Syracuse, Northwestern, and I'm blanking, but those are the two that like right away they jump into your head. You're Penn State, you're not touching a camera, let alone being in front of a camera, till maybe your senior year. Whereas that small school that focuses their communication department or the writing facility or whatever it is, seems to be where that hands-on experience gives you a little bit of a leg up. Do you feel that way?
Absolutely. And like I said before, you figure out what you want to do. Maybe you come in as a freshman, you get it to your sophomore year, and you're like, maybe I don't like the broadcasting side. Maybe I want to focus more on public relations or get into the writing side. If you go to a big school like that, you really don't have the opportunity to try those different things. You don't figure that out until you're about to graduate. So now you got to figure out what the heck am I going to do? Now, the only main thing I could think of that would be maybe a plus for some of those bigger schools is a large alumni pool that might be able to get you some jobs. But other than that, you really, like you said, you don't get the experience like you have going to a Bethany, to a Waynesburg, to a West Liberty, anything like that. And definitely helps out as far as figuring out what you want to do and getting you the experience necessary to make you job ready as soon as you graduate college.
Now, I got to ask, you talked about playing baseball. Did you play baseball at Waynesburg?
No, I did not. No, so baseball. I think no baseball. No baseball. No, I met with the coach, I think as soon as I got on campus. And I think I got a schedule for fall baseball, and I never went to anything like that. So actually the main reason I kind of didn't is a lot of my time was taken up. I worked off campus. So I worked for Finish Line, the shoe company, the shoe store. I was slinging shoes through college. It's kind of the joke that I say.
Slinging shoes.
That's right. And it was a good time, man. Other than the broadcasting side, I learned so much as far as, learning how to talk to people and learning some street smarts and learning the business side of different things. And it was kind of an educational experience in itself. And it really taught me time management and trying to push yourself to be your very best, because I'd be in class from 8 to 1, 9 to 1 every day. And then I'd go work at the store in Washington. I was at a bunch of different locations, Uniontown, Morgantown, from 2 to 9 or 3 to 9, and have to come back and do homework, and then maybe go to a radio show from 10 to midnight, do homework after that, and go to bed and do it all over again. So that really kind of took away from me trying to play baseball. And honestly, that's kind of the one regret that I have with college, is I feel like I worked too much. So I really didn't get too involved in like television and radio and writing into my junior and senior year, because I was managing at that point. So I was working 35, 40-hour weeks on top of doing, classwork, internships, broadcasting, and then maybe trying to do a little bit of writing, a little bit of radio, and a small sliver of TV on the side as well. So it was good though, because it kept me busy and it taught me a lot. But that is the one regret I kind of do have, is I really didn't get too involved when it comes to department activities towards the end of my college career. But
Now, so you bring the department activities up. What would you say the most memorable broadcast that you had or were a part of for your time at Waynesburg?
I think the most memorable thing that comes to me is that we would do like full productions, as you would know.
Mhm.
And so we would do a pregame show, and then they would go and do the game, and then they would have a pre-recorded halftime show as far as what's going on campus, anything like that for football. My favorite one is that it was two great friends of mine, Sam Hickson. You had Sam on the show, and Paul Zalakar, two good buddies of mine. We all did the halftime show together.
Mhm.
And it was cool. Yeah, or the halftime and pregame shows together.
Yeah.
And it's a cool experience because, I mean, now obviously I did a lot with those guys as far as radio. We did TV before, we did broadcast before, but to do that as my last broadcast on television, realistically, is in my senior year. That's definitely the number one thing I take away from that. And it was good to have that experience with those guys, and to look back on it now today is honestly probably my favorite thing that I've done there.
So we're fast forward, as you brought up, we're at now, you're graduating. And if I'm not mistaken by your resume, baseball is not completely out of the picture.
Right.
You're an assistant coach, correct?
Yes. So I've been assistant coach at Shadyside High School for the last 5 years. And kind of how I got into that was the head coach at Shadyside, his name was Sean Selman. And Sean was my head coach at St. John's for a couple of years, my freshman and sophomore year. And then he left and went to Shadyside, and then I just kind of followed suit after I graduated. It made sense that the team was fantastic. We have a lot of guys going to play Division I, Division II sports. One of our best players, his name is Bryce Amos. He's a reliever now for West Virginia, coming in as a freshman. So we have some Division I talent, which was nice. And the cool thing about that too is my first year was my brother's junior year of high school, and he played. So I kind of got to coach my brother, I guess. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to...
I would imagine.
Right. It's kind of hard to relate to him and his friends when they're 3 years younger than me. And then I'll come home after a game and they're hanging out in the living room couch. You know what I mean? Just as buddies. So yeah. It was cool to share that experience with him and to learn from so many kids. And those kids played a lot of baseball, man. And to learn from them was something that I always take forever. And that's kind of a goal of mine, is maybe to have my own program someday at the high school level, or at least be involved in baseball in some way. And to learn from those kids, which was awesome. But Sean actually just resigned this past year. He had some job issues. And I'm not 100% sure if I'll be back, but I may have another opportunity at a different high school, and we'll figure it out from there. But no, that was cool to be involved.
I hope that you keep at it, man. I hope you keep at it. I
appreciate that.
So how do we get ourselves to Wheeling? Because you don't just start off as the assistant athletic director. I believe you're a grad student at one point. You're broadcasting for them. You're broadcasting for the River. How does all this come into play?
So we'll start at the River. I was luckily had my number forward from a guy I went to high school with. His name was Walker Polivka. He was a broadcasting student at West Liberty, and he did some work for the River. This was before the Rocky, the station that I worked for, Rage now, before I worked for them, before they were under the River umbrella. I guess they were for Forever Media out of Pittsburgh. But Walker passed along my number to Johnny O. He's the main DJ on Cool 105.5, now WAMP 105 FM. And said, hey, if you'd be interested in doing some football games. And I said, yeah, absolutely, to do high school football games in my home area, because I know all the teams. I know a lot of the kids, because at that point I was only a year or two out of high school. So I went to school when I played with a lot of these kids growing up. And that was a cool experience. And I've been doing that ever since. We have a game Friday night. I'm in without COVID, would have been year 6, but this is year 5 of doing it. So that was definitely a cool experience. And I love every minute of it. I love doing it. It's a good time. But as far as getting out of college, I actually started at WTOV9 as a videographer at the television station in Steubenville. So again, it's awesome working in your home area, in your hometown, your home market. I know Lanny always told us, if you're going to work in your home area, make it your last job. So then that way you're not stagnant. You know what I mean? You're not just staying there, and you're.
I remember when we had him on the show, he said it. He might have said it 4 or 5 times. That's your last job. It's not the first job.
Right. Right. Because at that point, you're just going to stay there. And that I probably would have been a lifer there. Maybe it depends on what would happen. But I really loved the job to start, to be honest with you. I thought news was a good challenge. I never really worked in news ever. And I also was sent out to do some sports highlights. So I get out and get basketball, wrestling at the time, because it was in January of 2020 when all that was going on, January and February. And then you know what happens in March of 2020? COVID hits. The news world is pretty much focused on COVID and basically COVID only. It was basically COVID, and I guess if you want to call it siren chasing, basically, unfortunately, house fires, car crashes.
Yeah.
That was basically what we were doing other than COVID stories 90% of the time. So instead of going out and getting in-person interviews or man on the street interviews, it was basically Zoom interviews and cutting stock footage. So I really didn't leave the office. I was stuck in a dark editing bay for 7 hours a day for months on end and really didn't like it at that point. So after I graduated, right, maybe even before I graduated, I kind of considered going back for my master's. I just didn't know what I wanted to do it in. I really wasn't good at math, anything like that. So I really didn't know about doing business. I didn't know if I wanted to pursue another communication degree. And I just really didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Now around that time, though, I was lucky to build a connection with Andrew Woodley, who was the SID at Wheeling. He was the SID at Bethany, probably when you were there, right?
I believe so.
Okay. Andrew's a great guy.
Great guy.
Fantastic. Yes, he was a great mentor for me. But I did the broadcasting for them for their first year for their varsity football season, 2019. And luckily I made that connection through Professor Richard Krause, who's the department chair of Waynesburg for the communication department, and Adam Zundel, who was the director of communication for the Mountain East Conference. Adam is a Wheeling University alum, and Professor Krause, I believe, taught at Wheeling around that time when he was there. Okay. So he passed along my number. I did the games, had a blast doing it. Luckily, they thought I did a good job because they would bring me back in a larger role. So I texted Andrew one day and said, "Hey, are you looking for any graduate assistants?" And he said, "Yes, call me. We'll figure something out." Did a quick little phone interview, and the job was mine. So I left TOV, I believe was late July of 2020. And then I started at Wheeling, I believe August 3rd of 20, and was a sports information graduate assistant. And that was probably the easiest fall that any graduate assistant in sports information has ever had before, because we had no sports.
I'd say so. There was, unless you were creating stuff for people to be like, "Hey, we'll be back. We're not sure when yet, but just remember, we're coming back."
That's right. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, man. That was basically it. So we're coming up with content as far as like this day in history or how many days until or stuff like that. We updated a lot of record books on that. So it's kind of cool to start out that, because I got to learn a little bit about program history, especially doing the broadcasting side. I could throw some nuggets in it here and there. But yeah, that fall was easy, man. It was kind of cool because that was realistically the first fall I've had off, and to actually watch professional and college football and hang out with buddies, you know what I mean, on a Friday, Saturday night. Yeah. Outside of probably in high school. So it was kind of cool. I kind of missed doing the game off stuff, you know what I mean, for regular football season in the fall, but it was kind of cool to have a fall off. And especially that was well needed time off, because that next spring of 21 was absolutely nuts. We have 21 varsity sports, and all 21 competed in that spring. So let's get into that though.
Yeah. So from the sports information department, because I think this is the area of collegiate sports that it gets forgotten. Right. There was that following year after COVID where no matter what your number of sports was, school to school, you had 21 sports going on at the same time, and your job is to not only make sure all the stats are right and that all the papers and the news outlets get the story, but then also update the website and make sure that there's somebody to cover the game and cover this. And what was that semester like? I can't imagine.
I basically lived there. I should have just put a bed in my office, to be honest with you. It was crazy because you would never expect to have a basketball game on a Wednesday, okay? And then you go to a volleyball game on a Friday, and then you go to a football game on a Saturday, you know what I mean? And then you go to a lacrosse game the next Monday, and you just never expect it because those seasons never really come through together. And realistically, thank God we had great student workers. We have some of them that are still here now. They were freshmen then. I believe they're juniors and seniors now, and they've done a fantastic job. And so basically it was Andrew, myself, and then Nate Marco. Nate is a Bethany alum. And it was basically up to us. So it was, sometimes we'd have 3 sports going on all at once. Maybe we'd have lacrosse going on at our field, Bishop Schmidt Field on campus, and then maybe baseball and softball would be playing at the same time. So Andrew would have to take one, I'd have to take one, and Nate would have to take one. You know what I mean? And luckily, the spring sports really aren't that taxing as far as baseball, softball. But it was.
But
it
you
was
throw the rest
time,
of it in there, it becomes causes a little bit more havoc when you're talking about all the other sports on top of the spring sports.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, you expect baseball, softball, lacrosse, track. And you don't have to do anything with track other than just game recaps and everything like that. Maybe some previews, anything like that. A game day graphic. That's basically about it. Everything else on top of that involves a lot, especially when you come to football. That is a lot that you have to deal with. I shouldn't say deal with, but
it's a lot to put together.
Right, exactly.
So I have a question as the assistant athletic director. I was scrolling through on Twitter today before the show, and I saw that there's a little is there a Ohio County family battle going on between the Black and Gold School up on the hill and the red? Isn't there a brother on brother battle coming, or did it happen already? Did I miss it?
As of this recording, it is going on right now, actually. Well, so it's so West Liberty and Wheeling, our men's soccer coaches are brothers. Sean Regan is the head coach at West Liberty. Brandon Regan is just the newly hired coach for us here at Wheeling. And now the cool thing is, if you didn't know this, their father, Jim, was the head men's soccer coach at Wheeling for 39 years, and he actually started the women's program. So for the last, I believe Sean's been the head coach at West Liberty for 6 years. So for the last 6 years, it's been father on son, Jim at Wheeling, Sean at West Liberty. Jim just retired again after 39 years. And then Brandon came down as an assistant at Robert Morris to become the new head coach here at Wheeling. So now it goes from father, son to brother versus brother. So it's kind of cool. And
I imagine that Thanksgiving dinner is going to be a little hostile, no matter how it plays out. That's not a dinner I want to be at.
No, I wouldn't either. It depends. I think they have a great relationship. I think they talk every day. I don't know if they have one of those happy-go-lucky relationships to where they could just joke around before the game, where it's like one of those like, hey, hi, and that's it for.
Hey, hi, here's a handshake. Get on your sideline.
Right.
Away from
right. Exactly. I'm not sure what kind of relationship they have, but I know they're really close and they talk a lot. And we actually learned this. I guess this is not the first time that they played against each other. Brandon went to Lindsley and Sean went to Wheeling Central. So they would play against each other in high school. But this is the first time that they're actually going to coach against each other, I believe. So kind of a cool
interesting how close they've all stayed. I mean, Sean was at Bethany for most of my time there until Frankie Taw took over. And then Sean's been at West Liberty. I caught a couple. It was always the West Lib Wheeling game was always a game to go to because one, you get to see the Reagans go against each other. Now it's even a little bit more spicy because it's like, yeah, you might have got the better Christmas gift when we were 12, but who won the game last night? All right, thanks. That's all I need to hear.
That's right. That's all that matters. That's all that matters now.
So about 10 months ago is when you kind of step into this role as the assistant athletic director, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So we actually had some turnover in last summer. So summer of 2021, all at the same time. Andrew left. Andrew Woodley went and became an assistant SID at Duquesne, where he is today. And he's doing a great job. I believe he's covering football now, and they just went to Hawaii last week. So kind of cool to work in Hawaii for a week.
That's a nice trip.
Right. Not bad to get paid to go to Hawaii. And they went to Florida State too. So I think he's been to Tallahassee and Hawaii in back-to-back weeks. So
he's having a good couple weeks.
Right. I would say he is. So Andrew left, I think, in June, July. And then our athletic director at the time went to a different school within our conference. So my supervisor now, Carrie Hanna, was in my position. She was the assistant athletic director. And then she was pulled up in July as the head of the Department of Athletics. So it's kind of crazy because at that time we didn't have an SID. She just got pulled up out of the blue, because it wasn't a known thing that our AD was going to leave.
Yeah.
So it was basically her. And then I was basically running sports information for about a month. And the crazy thing was we hired like 2 or 3 coaches at that time. So I'm putting together press releases and not organizing, but running press conferences as a graduate assistant, which usually isn't a task held by that type of position, but it was a good challenge. So it was a crazy time, but then eventually brought on Zach Ziegler. He's a Waynesburg guy, graduated from Waynesburg in 2017. He's the RSID now. Mm-hmm. And then Carrie didn't have anyone to help her out from July to basically December. And I was working a job at that time. I was still a graduate assistant, but I was working a full-time job for a tool company called Hart, which they sell out of Walmarts. So I was spending 8 hours a day in a Walmart, which I really particularly didn't enjoy. The people there were great. My supervisor was fantastic. The pay was great. It was great company to work for, just not a great environment. You know what I mean? So I'd rather be in sports. So I told Carrie, I said, hey, I'd be really interested in the position. And sorry, my dog's chewing something up here. But I told Carrie I'd be greatly interested in the position and everything like that. Went through the interview process, and luckily I got the position December of last year, and I've enjoyed every second of it. It's been great. Like I said, it's awesome to be able to work again in your home area because there's not a lot of options. You have Wheeling, West Liberty, Bethany, W&J if you really want to count it, because W&J is about a half hour, 45 minutes away.
So and Franciscan would be the only other one I could think of, right?
Franciscan too in Steubenville. Right. So you don't have a whole lot of options. And for me to get in that at 23, 24 years old is definitely a blessing. And I've like I said, I've enjoyed every minute of it.
So I'm going to do a little different with you at the end. We're wrapping up things up here. I got to ask you, are you a Steeler fan? What are you growing up in the area? Where do you fall? Are you Cleveland? Are you completely different wild card? What's the team?
So I'm a flip-flopper, honestly. So when a college football, I'm an Ohio State guy. Both my parents went to Ohio State. Yeah. You know, like I see the grimace on your face. Yeah. But I'm an Ohio State guy. I'm actually a Cincinnati Reds fan. But yeah, I mean they're not good. So
hey, I'm all right with the Reds. You know why? Because they're what I hope my Pirates will one day be again. Just not in last place. Just
right. Yeah.
Not in the basement, like anywhere else.
The Reds are getting there. They're like a little bit better than the Pirates in the fact that they'll give them like a glimmer of hope every 5 years instead of like every 20. I'm not trying to talk bad about the Pirates.
No, listen, I understand. I waited 22 years for them to make the playoffs. They did it for 3 years, and then they said, all right, well, that's all you got. Thanks. Have fun.
Right. It's unfortunate. You know how it works is just smaller markets really can't compete, and is what it is. Same thing with Cincinnati.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's tough. So I'm an Ohio guy for Ohio State and for the Reds, but I'm actually a Steelers fan. I'm actually going to the game as of tonight. And when this comes out, I'm going to the game tonight in Cleveland with 2 of my buddies, Paul Zalakar and Sam Hickson. And it should be a good time. So I've been told be careful. I don't know if the fans in Cleveland are get a little wild when it comes to outside fans, especially against the Steelers, but
stay away from the Mooney or Uni parking lot. There was something about somebody, they're very upset with the Browns backers. If you see somebody with a Browns backer shirt on, get away from them. They're like toxicity out there. I don't know. I saw a bunch of stuff, you know. The only thing better than Steeler Twitter on a Sunday when the Steelers lose is Cleveland Twitter when they blow a 2-touchdown lead with under 2 minutes left to go. And let me tell you, I thought they were all just going to simultaneously explode the city because like minds were very, very, they were blowing on the social media platforms.
Right. What do you even say? What do you even say to that? When you blow a 2-touchdown lead in a minute and a half, I mean,
the old Cleveland Browns, now the Baltimore Ravens, had a very bad fourth quarter. And the new Cleveland Browns had a very Cleveland Brown-esque performance in, we have a 2-touchdown lead and there's less than 2 minutes. Watch us.
Right. Oh, we can
get rid of this.
Right.
You know, I say that, and as a Steeler fan, I know better because our offense has not looked good at all this year. Maybe we could throw the ball down the field instead of throwing it 3 yards. But hey, I'm not. They don't pay me to make those decisions. They pay Matt Canada still. I guess at the time of this recording, he is still being paid as the offensive coordinator. So,
right.
Zach, thank you very much. After as I said, 6 months of trying to work out our schedules to get you here. This has been Zach Schnegg. Did I get that right at the beginning? I meant to ask you before we started. Did I get it? Did I get your last name right?
Yeah, you got it, man. You got it. I know it's a little different. There's only one vowel, so it's kind of different, but no, you're getting it, man.
Pronouncing a 12-letter last name for years. You look at some names and you're like, man, I can't mess that up. Like, they can mess mine up, but I can't mess that up. Like,
well, hey, no, I appreciate that. I always say this too. I get, anytime I'm calling pizza or something, I'll see on the box, it'd be like snag, like SNAGG, like I'm snagged on something. So I'm glad you're able to get that right, man. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad that we could have you. This has been Zach Schnegg, Assistant Athletic Director at Wheeling University. I am Carlo Guadagnino. This show is Dingo Talk. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, anywhere else you can podcast. As I'm finding out, it's funny, you type yourself into Google or you type the show into Google. I learned my show's in a bunch of places I didn't know it was. So we'll have more places that you can find us as I find them. You didn't know that they were there, but if you found us and you know it, let me know, because I would like to know. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. The only thing you have to change is on Instagram, you need to add an underscore between Dingo and Talk. Otherwise, you're going to see a bunch of Australian prairie dogs, and that's not us. So we'll catch you next Thursday at 10 a.m. This has been Dingo Talk, and we'll see you next week, Chuckleheads.